get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Lisa Genovese of wearebottomline.com. And Lisa, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, there's a couple of interesting ones. Adee Clevitt. Adee Clevitt has an interesting niche. She helps businesses as an easy button to produce and create SOPs. So if they want to smooth out their staff onboarding, their client onboarding, or just any operational pieces, they call her and she helps dig into those things. So that was a really interesting episode because we talked about and geeked out our favorite productivity tools and softwares. Another good one was Duncan Elney. Duncan Elney specializes in food and beverage companies, and they do social media related activities for food and beverage companies and more mission based. And so he's been doing this for probably over a decade now. So he kind of shared his learnings in that realm as well. And that and many more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is actually brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast, or an easy button for a company to launch or run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So at least we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can develop amazing relationships and create amazing content and run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, whether it's introducing my guests to each other, or, I've had people guess, Lisa, I've gone to people's weddings. I've gone on family vacations with people and just formed these amazing relationships through the podcast. So I'm always looking at ways to give to my network. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us, support@rise25 to learn more. I'm excited to introduce Lisa Genovese. She's president of BottomLine. They can be found at wearebottomline.com. And BottomLine, I think you describe yourself, Lisa, as one part research firm and one part marketing agency. They've helped clients such as Pure Encapsulations, Coldwell Banker Commercial, Home Depot, and many, many more. And BottomLine wins market share for brands through key insights that come from actually in-depth research. And we're going to talk about research and the process and how you think about that. But this could mean changes to business models, pricing, and even market positioning. So Lisa, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
So just tell people a little bit more about BottomLine and what you do.
Yeah, happy to. So kind of as you said, we're like this hybrid model between the two worlds of research and implementation. Most people put us in that marketing agency bucket, but we firmly believe that till you've done your homework and you've done that deep dive into research, you're kind of just like chucking spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it sticks. So we help our clients utilize those research insights to either develop go-to-market strategies in new geographies, or sometimes it's more about taking market share back in their current markets. And then once plans are in place, we do have an implementation team that handles anything from visual brand identities, web design development, and creative. But really, it's all about making sure that there is some data and some research to support why we're doing something, instead of just like picking a cool idea out of the sky and hoping that it works. I firmly believe that the best strategies are rooted in research.
I want to talk about the evolution a little bit. And when BottomLine first started, what were the service offerings you started with? Because I know companies evolve over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. When I first started out, like any startup, it was very just like widespread anything marketing. So we would help with, well, it was mostly me doing a lot of strategy work, working with clients to develop new messaging. Sometimes it was new creative, a new website, new pieces of marketing collateral. And how that really evolved was that the agency I worked for before starting BottomLine, they didn't do research, and they only focused on one market vertical as well. They were, fine selling the same strategy to competing, in this case, it was IT firms. And I just wasn't. And I firmly believe that there had to be a better way. And that's why I left and started BottomLine. But as we kind of got into projects, I started to realize that kind of by nature, I always was going back to do my homework before I would tell a client why they should do something or make a suggestion within their business. And so it was kind of just my innate way of doing things. And one day, fast forward, probably 5 to 7 years after starting the business, I realized we're doing the same process for every single client. Why are we not charging for this work? And why is this not like a formalized process that all of our clients go through? I laugh about it now, but it feels kind of silly that it wasn't like that right from the beginning. And so we set out for a whole year to do a study on answering the question, what really separates small businesses from becoming those big legacy brands? What separates the wheat from the chaff? And we did a really interesting thing internally where everybody gave their hypothesis on what they thought was going to be the outcome of this study. And I'm very happy to say I was wrong, just as much as my team was wrong. So we all guessed that it was going to be access to opportunity or capital, fill in the blank. And it wasn't any of those things. It really came down to what we now call our impact principles or our impact pillars. Those things don't cost money at all. It's more about changing your mindset, changing your positioning around those 5 things. And so, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
Talk about the impact pillars.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And so with those impact pillars, so the first bit of the study was qualitative research, just to understand what were businesses challenged with, why were they finding that they weren't getting to the next level, and then we had to prove that why. And it came down to things like remarkability. So what made them drastically different than their competitors? And it couldn't just be price-based. It had to actually be something drastically different that they did. Greater purpose was the next one. So when I talk about greater purpose, people often think I'm talking about, giving back to charity or, social impact or, B Corp. That's living your purpose. What your purpose is really what gets you out of bed to do what you do every day. Why do you do it? What's your why? So helping them define that and really work that into their messaging and into their culture. Value. So I teach a class on this now, which is your customer decides your value, not you, but it is so true. So what do your customers find of value in your business, in your services, or your products? Immersive experience is another one. So immersive experience is a bit of a tricky one as it relates to B2B, but it can be applied to both B2C and B2B, where we're looking at what habits or rituals does your ideal customer have in their day-to-day life, and how do you either create a new habit or break an old one? And you pair your brand alongside that trigger. And then the other really interesting one is brand attachment. So most marketers will track brand loyalty. The problem with brand loyalty is that it doesn't actually correlate to sales and revenue if you look at it on a graph. Brand attachment, on the other hand, does. It's based on the same psychological principles that you'd find in an interpersonal human-to-human relationship, except for it's human to brand. And how you create it is 3 things: affection, connection, and passion. And you do that through helping your clients build, with their clients, with their customer base, shared and common experiences, a feeling or a sense of belonging. Really, you have to create that feeling that that brand gets me, they understand me. So it's those 5 things, and I know I ran through it super fast, but those are the 5 things that really do separate the wheat from the chaff. And if you can work those into your positioning, I can promise you that your brand will be better off because of it.
And then, by the way, if someone's listening to the audio, there's a video version, and you'll see us kind of poking around wearebottomline.com. And we're looking here at the impact assessment. page. So this is kind of, it looks like kind of the roadmap of where they start, when they finish, and you're walking them through some of these things. What are some of the key pieces in this journey?
Yeah. So this is like a typical roadmap of what a typical one looks like. I will say we do a lot of custom engagements now that have other additional pieces in them. But you know, the key things here are the research. So when you look at the kickoff, the impact pillars we just talked about, and then you'll see a bubble there for market research. And so that's that deep dive into just empirical analysis to start with. But then we start to get into more qualitative research where we would do customer interviews. Sometimes that would include focus groups. Mystery shopping is another really big one that we do on the competitive analysis side. And when I say mystery shopping, I'm not just talking about B2C mystery shopping. We do an equal amount of B2B mystery shopping as well. You fast forward through, you know, your typicals of SWOT analysis, audit results, things like, you know, web content, social audits, all kind of piecing the picture together to look at, okay, well, what are we actually looking at here? Is there something that's missing? And it almost always, once you've gone through all of these steps, it like screams off the page what the issue is, whether it be a positioning problem, whether it be a pricing problem, so on and so forth. And so we deliver that. The first big delivery in this process is a positioning delivery, and it's showing the client, here is the summary, because there'd be thousands of pages long if we didn't summarize it, of all the research. Here's what we found. Here is who you have told us your, you know, ideal customer avatars are. And then we will also make recommendations on changes to that. Lastly, we will also show, here's new positioning for your brand, if that's what makes sense. Sometimes it's not a reposition, but I'd say that more often than not is. And then off of your positioning delivery, we run clients through a business goals and budgeting exercise. And we really take a look at, well, where are they spending their marketing dollars, right down to printing business cards. And when we talk about budgets, it's not about what money is paid to, you know, BottomLine or to their agency for implementation. It really is all encompassing of everything in their marketing department. And then we'll talk about goals. So now that we know all of this from the research, what could the goal be? And I find that is an important distinction. A lot of people do the goals at the beginning of an engagement. The problem with that is you haven't even uncovered where the challenges are and what could be possible. And we need to know that before we set a goal. So once we've got goals and budgets, then we write the plan. And so with plans, that can be anything from, like I've mentioned, a go-to-market strategy and new geography. Sometimes it is more of a traditional marketing plan. And then we have variations of this engagement where, you know, we've been hired by, say, a large big box brand that wants to launch, you know, a new sub brand in a new market. So maybe it's a market validation study. So we've done quite a bit of that work too. But with the plans, it's always, you get a summary of what are the most important things that you need to know. So kind of the executive team has a digestible chunk. And then we accompany it with what we call just marketing details, that's usually 100+ page document of how to execute on everything that's in your summary documentation.
And then after that, they can execute on it, or your team will help them?
Absolutely. So we've got clients that have full in-house marketing departments that just come to us for the impact assessment process. And then we have others where it is, you know, a mix of their team and our team executing. And then we've got a third option, which is clients that don't have any form of an internal marketing department and they want us to do everything. So.
What's interesting, Lisa, is in your agency journey, after about 5 years, you realize we have this process that we're doing and we're really not charging for it, right? And then you decide, okay, we're going to charge for this thing. How do you decide at that point on the pricing? And then how do you position against what you were doing before as the service?
Oh, such a good question. And I would say very vulnerably, it was hard. It was really hard to make that switch. I wish I had a great answer, but I'd say that we fumbled through it for a few years until we started to, pun intended, drink our own Kool-Aid and go back to the basics of doing our own mystery shop. doing our own competitive analysis to understand what are other agencies charging, what other service offerings are other agencies bundling in with this. And what was cool about that exercise that we learned is that there really wasn't another agency out there, and even to date, because we do it now on an annual basis, nobody else is doing what we do in quite the same way. It's more pieces of what we do that have been broken off into different service offerings, et cetera. And then the pricing was the other really big piece where I found we were actually priced way too low in comparison to the competition. I would say even today's date, we're still on the mid to low side of what people are charging for these type of services. But we're a little bit more thoughtful about it now and more purposeful about it, because I want to continue to have the service be accessible to a mid-sized company. So a lot of the names that you read off at the start, that's great. But we work with lots of clients who say, we're not Home Depot. We don't have, a $5 million budget to spend. We've got a $500,000 budget to spend, or we've got a $50,000 budget to spend. And we still want to be able to help those clients. I wish I could say it's been perfect in the sense that we haven't been able to come up with something that suits, a startup budget. So we haven't been able to kind of go there, but at least keeping it attainable for a mid-sized company for sure.
I know in the beginning, for something like that, we just want to get data, right? What did you start off charging in the beginning just to get data to see, okay, we've never charged for this before. We just want to improve the process and get some data.
Totally. So we were charging $5,000 for an impact assessment at the beginning, which I'm like,
just to give people a sense, like, I don't know if there's a timeline, like, oh, this takes X number of months, or what does that look like?
So a typical 12-week engagement that probably had, I don't know, about 120 team hours into it. Like we were giving it away. But to your point about gathering data, super helpful in that we had a couple clients go through as like a beta test. And granted, we had been doing this service offering really for 5 years at this point. But once we had formalized it into calling it an impact assessment, we had a couple of clients that went through at that $5,000 price tag in exchange for, feedback on how it was, how it helped their business. And it was tremendously helpful for us and for them. So it was a great value exchange. But yeah, our pricing's changed a little bit since.
What was some of the feedback you got early on to improve that?
So way back then, we were doing a lot of these in person. And one of the big challenges was the time investment from the client side. So having to travel to our offices, the prep work that needed to be done, and then having an executive team in a boardroom for, 2 days, 5-hour sessions. That was really, really challenging on their end. So, you fast forward to today's date, how we've evolved that. We do most of these virtually now. We don't do really anything in person. We've cut down the prep work for clients a lot using AI. As well, the time that clients are spending in discovery, we've shaved down now to 5 hours in total instead of 10 hours in total. So half that. And that's largely to do with, we've changed some of the exercises, we've changed some of the pre-work they do that gives us more information in the discovery process. So time was a big one. And just looking at how do we innovate there. And that's, so far the feedback's been strong that's been working really well.
So typically, no matter what they come to you with, Lisa, you start with this pathway, this discovery and this research. So they'll be like, hey, I don't know what is a common thing that people ask, like, we need a new website. I don't know, what are people coming to you with? We need more leads, or I don't know what they're saying. And you are saying, that's great. We need to start with figuring out why and doing the research. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So what you hit the nail on the head. Usually it's we need a new website, or our sales team isn't selling enough, or our competitors are eating our lunch. And I immediately ask, or our sales team will ask, why? Why do you think you need a new website? And they usually, well, our competitor's website is better, or we're not getting enough new leads from it, or, fill in the blank. And it almost always, like 99% of the time, the answer stems back from a positioning problem. Like the new website is just a symptom of a greater challenge that they have. And I also think, in the marketing field, so many people are only looking at the promotion. Like they're really only looking at how do we advertise this thing? And they're missing a whole lot of people, process, pricing. I could go on and on of the P's. But if you don't look at it holistically like that, you're bound to miss something. And then it becomes like pushing a boulder uphill, versus if your positioning is right, your pricing is, on point, you're talking to the right customer, it's easy. If it feels hard, you're doing something wrong.
Talk about the evolution of the team, right? At first, you strike out on your own and it's you.
That's
What
right.
were some of the key positions that you hired for over the course of the business?
Yeah, good one. So yes, it was just me at the beginning. About a month in, two of my direct reports from the previous agency came to me and said, "Hey, can we have a job?" And like a crazy person, I said yes. And so that was a back end and a front end developer. And so we carried on, the three of us, till about that 5-year mark. And that was really when we started to make some adjustments. The first key hire I made was just an administrative assistant, to help me with like emails and proposals and like just the back end stuff. We outsourced it to an accounting firm, but finance has never been really my strong suit. So worked with some great finance partners. Next big hire was a project manager. So kind of like account/project manager that helped me, with client meetings, making sure things were getting done behind the scenes. And then from there, it kind of evolved into, trying to think of the words for it, but more of a formal hierarchy where we started to hire and have
Like a middle management type of
middle
thing?
management. We had different departments, very different than how things looked at the beginning. And I wish I could say that was perfect. But it wasn't. There's been a lot of sways in the road as we kind of moved forward, and I made some great hiring decisions, some poor hiring decisions. But really what got us to where we are now, as I was mentioning earlier, we've leveraged a lot of really great psychometric tools, which have helped us, make sure we've got the right bums in the right seats, but also making sure that people have, the tools to help manage themselves and lead themselves. It wasn't until I started making the effort to understand how I operated that I realized, man, this would be so useful for, my managers to understand how they operate and what their own personal emotional needs are. And then how does that translate to their direct reports? We've recently been doing some, what we're just calling leadership debriefs. So our management team gets together, or I shouldn't say, sorry, our management team, but all the managers get together once a week. And we go over what happened in your week from a leadership perspective that you need support on. And we'll do like live coaching on the calls, where other managers can learn from a situation. And it has been amazing, the learnings that have come out of it. And our team has really embraced, so that the psychometric we use is called predictive index, and really embraced that as part of our culture, where people will understand what one another needs, both from a communication standpoint as well as just a workflow management standpoint. And we had a lot happier people and a heck of a lot better progress and productivity because of it. So I don't know if that.
What about, you mentioned that it's really valuable to have that ongoing call so people can express what's getting in the way or what they need support on. What is one of those learnings that came out of that one of the calls? Like someone said, "Oh, this is what's going on," and people shared maybe an experience from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to be a bit vulnerable. So we had something happen recently where we had made a poor hiring choice, and I was away on vacation. And there were some things that went down, let's say, that were less than ideal. So I came back to a bit of a,
I think we've all been there, Lisa.
not what I was hoping to come back to. But so I spent my first day back from vacation doing a bit of investigation about what had happened. This person then effectively was let go the next day. And so that Friday we did a leadership debrief. And one of the really cool things that came out of it was we had this discussion about, well, why did this person's approach not fit with our team culture? And effectively what all the managers had to say and what all of their direct reports had to share when they learned the news was that when someone doesn't fit our culture, it almost is like a natural progression that they just move out of the organization. And I don't mean it in like a malicious way, but more so, you know, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And there was one individual that had had quite an abrasive conversation with this person before their exit. And she, you know, was vulnerable and shared in this leadership debrief that she had kind of felt uncertain and she wasn't really sure why. And then she brought it back to leadership terms that this person was using authoritarian, like dictator type leadership. And that is so not our culture and how we work. And so, you know, she got a bit of coaching around that and how she might handle things differently. But it was helpful for all the managers to kind of see that it wasn't just this one person that had the challenge. And it was also the entire company culture that we have built. Everybody kind of wanted to protect that when somebody didn't fit that bill. I don't mean to say like we're cliquey at BottomLine because we are so not.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think it's Jim Collins' Built to Last. They do talk about this, and certain companies just have a culture, and people naturally kind of make their way out of that culture if they don't fit. I think it was Built to Last. They talk about, you know, whatever, Nordstrom's and other companies that similar things happen there.
Oh, totally. And I think you can look at those situations as a negative, or you can go through them and look at where's their silver lining, where is there a positive in this? And I think that there was a tremendous amount of learning, both for my team, but also for me through that situation on what were the red flags during the hiring process so we don't repeat that again. And thankfully it didn't cause too much of a rocked boat that we didn't, you know, damage anything internally either.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that you recognize those things quickly and it wasn't like 10 years later. For the learning for that person approaching that other person, was that when you did a debrief, was that the appropriate response? Or because on one hand, maybe it caused a reaction of the person and you let them go, but on the other hand, you let them go because they're not a fit. So would you, when you discussed it, would you go back and change anything with that person, how they handled it, or not?
That's a good question. I would say in this case, the individual on our team, we'll call her just her, and the individual who's departed, I would say her response probably could have been a little bit different, and that was part of the coaching, because she kind of flipped out and was like, "You can't do this here," instead of maybe having a sidebar.
Maybe a little different, like said in a tactful way, as opposed to, you know, just less tactful, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Okay. But in terms of like the person departing, et cetera, I would change nothing. The only thing I would change is going back to, there was a red flag in the hiring process that was caught, that I think we would in the future.
At what point do you administer the predictive index? Is it in the hiring process or after?
Hiring process. And so we use it as part of, not all of, a screening tool. Very well aware that could be considered bias. So we have multiple other factors as part of the screening process as well. But it's been vital in just understanding, does this person's, you know, personality characteristics match up with, you know, what we're looking for in this particular job, so that we're not wasting their time or ours. Because if you look at, you know, my PI, if you put me in an accounting job, like I'd last 3 weeks at best. Like I couldn't do it because it would burn me
So
out.
it depends what position you're hiring for and what gets spit out. Like this person's wanting to come on for this position, but their predictive index says maybe they wouldn't be a fit. Something like that.
Exactly. So I'm not high detail orientation, hence why I'd be really poor in an accounting position as an example. So it does measure all of those types of characteristics. It does not measure intelligence. I want to be super clear about that.
It just measures more like behavior.
Exactly. And also, so what is your innate, like your natural state of being? And then also you'll see through this, it'll show you where do you feel that you're actually having to change the way you normally are for the job that you're currently in. So again, if you put me in an accounting role, you would see that my detail orientation is having to stretch so far that I'm going to burn out at some point. Or I'm going to be really grumpy and cranky. So, yeah, you've got it up there. That's the exact tool I'm talking about. And it's been pretty fundamental.
One thing, Lisa, you shared, which I think is really interesting, you've said a few times, is mystery shopping. And talk about how you do that internally, because I think it's really valuable to think about that as a company in general.
Yeah. So the most simple way to do it is really figure out, okay, what answer am I looking for? Or what am I trying to evaluate? Then you're going to develop your backstory and your targets. And then you'll draft what are the questions or the things I want to find out about in what sequential order. What's super important about when you do your mystery shop is making sure that you're comparing apples to apples. So you're asking the same questions of each of the companies that you're shopping. And then where possible, record, because our human brains cannot remember every little detail. And although it may feel insignificant at the time, often can be that one, golden nugget that you overlook. So we try, if we're doing like an in-person mystery shop, most of our team will actually have a recorder used legally. I want to be clear about that. And or if we're doing, a phone.
Well, oftentimes it sounds like you're mystery shopping your own clients too. So you have, approval from them, I assume, to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, that's the key thing. Just make sure it's an apples to apples comparison. And you can find, oh my gosh, the things you can find out are crazy. I have a fun story actually about mystery shopping. So we did some work for a debt solutions company that's here in Calgary, and they have a location in Edmonton. And their greatest challenge was that they would have a tremendously high conversion rate on booking an initial appointment. So they were running a digital campaign. But after that appointment was booked, they had like an 80% no-show rate. 80%. And they wanted to know why. So they hired us to figure that out for them. And I will never forget the day that we placed the recorder down on this was back when we were doing them in person, but recorder down on the boardroom table, and we played that tape for their CEO. Now, the reason why people were no-showing is their receptionist would call to confirm the appointment. And she was a little bit crusty and a little bit not the nicest person to talk to. People were already scared about coming into an appointment, such as settling their debt with the government. Of course, they're not going to want to come to an appointment where they feel like they're going to be judged and have to deal with a prickly receptionist. So what's cool about that story, though, is they got her some customer service training, and I think she still even works there to this day. So it wasn't as if the person got fired, and that's what everybody always assumes. But no, the person just needed some proper training around how to deal with those calls, and smooth sailing.
Love that. The prickly receptionist. That's a very, very nice way of saying it. I've dealt with those too. It's amazing. I do think of it, from a company standpoint. Our judgment is on whoever's answering the email or whoever's answering the phone, no matter if they're world class or not. And there's companies I know, they're amazing. And when I've called, I've dealt with a prickly receptionist, and it sours the experience. It makes me not want to do business with them. And it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, And people aren't usually going to say something; they're just going to leave. You know, so it's so important. Each touch point is important.
Totally. Totally.
I'd love to highlight a little bit more and share what, we went through the process. Thanks for sharing kind of how research applies to business and how the process works. Let's talk about a few examples. And I'm familiar with, because I have a background in health related things, pure encapsulations and what you did there.
Yeah, happy to. So Pure, they're a Nestle Health Sciences brand. And when they came to us, they were really struggling with their digital footprint and uptake on some on the practitioner side, but a lot on their D2C work. And so, sorry, direct to consumer. I am terrible with acronyms. So we took them through our digital assessment framework. So a little bit different than what we showed before, but similar. So it was a deeper dive into, past digital campaigns that they ran, all their content marketing, their current website, and also just to kind of understand their audience. We did some qualitative on that one as well. And again, super interesting what we found. So their messaging is quite, given the nature of the business, it was sterile. It was very medically focused. And although that resonated with the healthcare
practitioners,
audience, it really was tough for the D2C stuff, because as a consumer, when you start talking about, methylation and, half-life of medication and like all of those things that they really had no idea. So we helped them with a little bit of a reposition, especially on messaging for that D2C audience. And then we helped them run a pretty comprehensive programmatic campaign to reach that audience. So they did geofenced a bunch of naturopathic clinics, and I believe they also did like nutraceutical dispensaries, if you will, or like an Amaranth or a Community Natural Foods.
Yeah, there's like a lot of health food stores or health kind of vitamin shops.
Yeah, exactly. And so we geofenced all those locations, grabbed the user ID from iPhone and Android devices. It's all to a GDPR standard privacy. I should clarify that. And then we imported those lists into a DSP where we ran programmatic ads. And so you'll see here, like what you've got up on the screen, we ran brand awareness, then we followed up with social, and then further down the funnel, we leveraged some Google search and display, as well as some hyper ads to foster that conversion. And it worked very, very well for them. They saw a pretty tremendous lift. This year, we're tasked with doing something similar for their healthcare practitioner audience. So the messaging will be still staying on that more scientific side, but we've got some really fun stuff that I can't quite share all of it right now. We're going to be rolling out for them this year to just further build their HCP audience as well.
With this example, Lisa, were they trying to drive people to stores to get it, or were they able to get it on a website somewhere?
Great question. So there's actually 3 places. So this was a big thing that has been a bone of contention internally for them. They do sell through Amazon D2C. You can buy through e-commerce, as well as you can buy in a retail environment, along with a bunch of other e-tailers like Healthy Planet. I think they're on well.ca. And, it's tough because knowing the breakdown of their target audience, selling on Amazon isn't really conducive to reaching that healthcare practitioner audience. They don't love that patients can also just go and buy it directly on Amazon. And so that's been something we've been working through with them. I giggle a little bit because I think there's no one size fits all answer to this.
Yeah.
It's really come back to what's their biggest bang for their buck, and it has been healthcare practitioners that are going to buy in mass quantities versus the end consumer that's going to buy one-off products every month. But
so in this case, some of the time it may have been to a physical location.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because if I were a physical location, that's pretty enticing. If the company is going to geo-target and run ads to drive people to my location, they should be like charging those companies, or you should be charging those companies too. Like you're driving traffic to those stores, essentially.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's a pretty good deal for them, actually. What about Verge Agriculture? What'd you do there?
They're an interesting one. So they came to us when they weren't called Verge. They came to us when they were called Whipcord. And they were effectively a co-location in a data center. But they had just acquired this agri-tech product called First Pass. And well, at that time, they weren't really sure what to do with it. So we took them through an impact assessment, helped them kind of pull apart the layers of the onion on, is this going to be something that they package alongside Whipcord services, or is it going to be something else? It ended up being something else. So we helped them develop the Verge brand. Came up with obviously new name, new position, new visual brand identity. And then we did a second impact assessment where we helped them bring it to market in multiple different continents. The first one was, I always mix this up. First one was Australia. Then we moved into South America, primarily Brazil, and then over into Europe. They're in other countries now, but effectively this was a really big undertaking, because to split those two brands was one behemoth, and then to really look at how do we bring this to market in Canada and then all of those other markets. And it happened in a very short time frame. We did that work in 18 months and had them in all those continents in 18 months, which felt like blow your hair straight back.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. But it was fun. So some of the kind of key pieces out of this project as well. So their target audience, of course, was farmers and larger scale farming operations. And I think I mentioned this to you, that I came from an agriculture farming background. I grew up on a cow-calf operation. And so this one was kind of near and dear to my heart. And we did a lot of the qualitative in person. So we would actually go, out to the fields, have an interview with a farmer. So he'd hop down off of his tractor. We'd sit on the tailgate of the truck, do the interview, record it, come back to the office. So that was really fun. Another big thing that we did when they were promoting Verge in the different markets is they did like tailgate or toolbox barbecues during harvest season. So they would invite all the neighbors to come in and they'd show a little bit about Verge, and then they would like legitimately do a wiener roast off the back of the, tailgate of the truck. And they did some contests where we gave away branded Yeti coolers that said Verge down the side. So that was all fun. We changed it a little bit depending on the continent. So that worked really well in Canada. In Latin America, we tried to, again, tie in some of that Latin culture. So those were kind of the research bits and bobs. But the other thing that we did on this one that was like a big project and a big milestone was they wanted to showcase video. And with their product, it was really challenging, like on a computer screen, and you're even seeing it here, to actually demonstrate, well, what is First Pass and how does it work? So we did a week-long photo shoot out in Saskatchewan where it was harvest season. So there was all the equipment was, moving in order, doing their thing. We captured all of it on video, and then we had videographers get in the cabs of either the tractors, combines, you name it. And they would capture video of the screen of First Pass actually. So it's a route guidance tool that helps farmers optimize their path, hence First Path. It's got a new name now, but back then that's what it was called. And anyways, we captured First Pass in its real form working. And it helped them so much on the other side of connecting the dots for farmers, for them to actually understand, how is this going to work in actual practice? Instead of them just like whipping out an iPad with some photos of it, they could actually show through animation. Here's what this actually looks like, and then here's what it looks like in the cab of the tractor using it. So
That's really cool. Lisa, I have one last question.
Sure.
And I would love to hear a lesson from growing up on a farm. But before you answer that, I just want to point people to wearebottomline.com to learn more. And actually, while you think of that, I was watching this video. I came across this video the other day and I loved it. And if you're watching the video here, there's a video, I guess it's Brandon William channel. I don't know the person, but it's farmers versus bodybuilders. And they go through a series of competitions to see who's stronger. It's fascinating and it's fun. So anyways, talk about lessons from a farm.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I gotta go find that video. Oh my goodness, so many things, but I would say the value of hard work and the value of community are the two really big things that stick out to me from my childhood. Right from an early age, we were expected to, get out of bed and I did chores every day before I went to school. But learning that routine and that
What time were you waking up and what were the chores?
Usually 4:35-ish. My bus picked me up at 7:04 every morning to go to school. So it was usually a combination of, feeding cows, feeding horses, checking waters, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, the lesson definitely was just the value of hard work and that hard work always pays off. And then the value of community too. I spent a lot of time in 4-H as a kid. And some of those relationships that I built, I still have to this day. And I think back to, public speaking, what we're doing right now. Public speaking was a requirement as part of 4-H. You couldn't advance to your next year if you didn't do your public speaking component. I hated it at the time, but it's been really helpful to me in my career now. So those are my two big ones: build good relationships and work hard, and it always pays off.
What does the morning routine look like now? I'm assuming you don't wake up at 4:30 still.
No, not anymore. Quite that
Good.
early.
You deserve to sleep in at this point. No, but Lisa, I just want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out wearebottomline.com to learn more. And we'll see everyone next time. Lisa, thanks so much.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.